Admiral Catherine Morrison stood motionless on the bridge of the UES Defiant, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched humanity's worst nightmare materialize between Mars and Jupiter. The Halaxian warships emerged from hyperspace like a cascading metallic storm, each vessel breaking through the fabric of reality with a flash of quantum displacement that turned the void between planets into a symphony of light. 10,000 signatures and counting. Admiral. Lieutenant Commander Jack Rivera reported, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The smallest one is 3 times the size of our largest carrier. Catherine didn't respond immediately. Her gray eyes, which had earned her the nickname Steel Kate during the Mars colonial crisis, studied the tactical display with cold precision. The Halaxian ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns, beautiful, ordered, and absolutely wrong for space warfare. "Look at their formation," she murmured, more to herself than her crew. "They're fighting like old wet navies." Before anyone could question her observation, every screen on the bridge flared to life. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the command deck, a towering, serpentine creature with iridescent scales and multiple sets of arms. Its voice resonated through the ship's speakers with artificial perfection, synchronized in every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth, hear the words of Grand Admiral Zixklar of the Eternal Halaxian Empire. Your civilization has been deemed suitable for integration. You will submit to imperial authority within 3 planetary rotations, or face immediate extinction. Your technology level has been assessed. Resistance would be futile and wasteful." Catherine watched her bridge crew's reactions: fear, anger, desperation, but also determination. Humanity had known this day would come eventually. They'd seen the signs, tracked the patterns of disappearing civilizations at the edge of their observation range. They'd prepared. "Admiral." Communications Officer Sarah Wells called out, her voice tight. "We're receiving reports from every major Earth defense center. The same message is broadcasting worldwide, on every frequency, in every language. The UN Security Council is requesting your immediate presence at the emergency session." Catherine allowed herself a small smile. "Patch me through to the Council, but keep our tactical analysis running. I want to know every detail about how they move." The main screen split, showing the grim faces of Earth's leadership on one side and the continuing tactical analysis on the other. The Halaxian ships continued their methodical deployment, arranging themselves in layers like ancient galleons preparing for a broadside. "Admiral Morrison." The UN Secretary-General's voice was strained but composed. "You're seeing this." "I am, sir. And I'm seeing something else too." She gestured to her tactical officer, who highlighted the enemy fleet's movement patterns. "They're treating space like an ocean. 2-dimensional thinking from a supposedly advanced civilization. Their entire fleet doctrine is based on naval warfare concepts that we abandoned 50 years ago." A murmur ran through the council members. Catherine continued, her voice gaining strength. "They're expecting us to either surrender immediately or respond with brute force. Their formation is optimized for fighting other Imperial fleets, not—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Not the kind of defense we've actually prepared. You're suggesting we proceed with scattered thunder." The Chinese representative leaned forward, his expression intense. Catherine nodded. "They've given us 72 hours. That's more than enough time to activate everything. Their sensors are actively scanning us, but they're looking for warships, for conventional fleet formations. They're seeing exactly what they expect to see, a primitive civilization with a handful of crude space vessels. And our actual capabilities?" The Russian delegate's question hung in the air. "Completely invisible to their scanning methods." Catherine's smile grew slightly sharper. "They're looking for a navy, sir. They don't realize they've just sailed into the largest minefield in the galaxy." As if to punctuate her words, another wave of Halaxian ships emerged from hyperspace, their formation a perfect mirror of ancient Earth naval tactics. They were executing their strategy flawlessly, exactly according to their doctrine. And that, Catherine knew, would be their undoing. Authorization granted, Admiral Morrison. The Secretary General announced after a brief conference. Initiate preparations for Scattered Thunder. Let's show them how humanity responds to ultimatums. Dr. Marcus Thompson's underground laboratory beneath the Mojave Desert hummed with nervous energy as technicians rushed between holographic displays, each showing different aspects of humanity's hidden defense grid. He stood before the main projection, his fingers dancing through the ghost-like image of Earth's orbital sphere, where thousands of red dots marked pieces of what the world had long dismissed as space junk. Status report on grid section Alpha through Delta, he asked, his voice carrying the weight of a decade's secret work. All weapons platforms responding. Sir, Lieutenant Hannah Rodriguez answered, her young face illuminated by the blue glow of her console. Power signatures masked and holding steady at 0.01% of detection threshold. The Halaxians are literally looking right through us. Marcus allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Project Scattered Thunder had begun as a desperate gamble. Transform Earth's orbital debris problem into its greatest defense. Each piece of junk contained dormant nanofabrication systems, waiting for the signal to transform into whatever weapon the situation required. His tablet chirped with an incoming priority message. Admiral Morrison's face appeared, her expression taut with controlled tension. Doctor, please tell me Scattered Thunder is ready for full deployment. Better than ready, Admiral. Marcus switched to a tactical view, highlighting the Halaxian fleet's position. Their sensor technology is exactly what we predicted, quantum-based arrays looking for power signatures and conventional weapons. They can't see anything that appears inactive. How many platforms are we working with? Marcus gestured, and the display zoomed out to show the full scope of their defense grid. 12,000 primary weapons platforms disguised as defunct satellites. Another 30,000 smaller units masked as debris fragments, each one capable of reconfiguring into whatever we need. Energy weapons, missile launchers, point defense systems, or electronic warfare platforms. Confirmed, sir, Hannah chimed in, her fingers flying over her console. I'm seeing a major vulnerability in their sensor coverage. They're scanning in predictable patterns, leaving gaps we can exploit for power-up sequences. The Admiral's expression hardened. We've monitored their communications. They're already dividing up Earth's resources, planning their integration protocols. They expect us to either surrender or launch a suicidal conventional attack. Marcus switched to another display, showing the results of their analysis of Halaxian technology. Their overconfidence is understandable. Their entire civilization is built on overwhelming force and rigid doctrine. They've never encountered a species that turned their own garbage into a weapon. A warning light flashed on Hannah's console. Sir, they're launching scout vessels, probably to begin detailed planetary surveys. Marcus nodded to his team, and the laboratory erupted into controlled chaos as final preparations began. Technicians activated hardened quantum computers, each dedicated to controlling a section of their hidden arsenal. The platforms would have to power up in perfect synchronization, appearing to be nothing more than normal background radiation until the moment they struck. Time to show them why you don't back humanity into a corner, Marcus muttered, initiating the final pre-activation sequences. On his main display, the massive Halaxian fleet continued their methodical deployment, utterly unaware that they were surrounded on all sides by weapons masquerading as trash. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the tension. Dr. Thompson, you have 48 hours to bring the grid online. When they make their move, I want our first strike to be their last surprise. Understood, Admiral. Marcus turned to his team, his voice carrying across the laboratory. You heard her, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to this. Hannah, begin power-up sequences for beta cluster, random intervals, no more than 0.1% visibility threshold. As his team sprang into action, Marcus studied the tactical display one last time. The Halaxians had arranged their fleet like an ancient naval armada, their formations optimized for battles with enemies just like themselves. But they weren't facing another empire. They were facing humanity's greatest triumph of recycling, a defense grid born from the very debris they couldn't be bothered to notice. The Martian surface erupted in a blinding flash as the Hylaxian demonstration shot carved through the planet's crust. Admiral Catherine Morrison watched from the Defiance bridge as a canyon 50 miles long blazed into existence, its edges still glowing with residual plasma energy. Message received from Hylaxian Command. Lieutenant Commander Rivera reported, his voice tight. They say that was 5% power from a single light cruiser. Catherine's expression remained unchanged. Send no response. Dr. Thompson, are we ready? Operation Firefly is hot. Admiral. Thompson's voice came through her private comm channel. All platforms showing green. Lieutenant Rodriguez has programmed the debris field movements to look completely random. They won't see a pattern until it's too late. The massive Hylaxian fleet hung in space like a metallic storm cloud, their ships positioned in perfect formation around Mars. Their warning shot had been precisely calculated, enough to demonstrate overwhelming power, but not enough to damage any potential resources they planned to claim. Time to extinction deadline, Catherine asked, though she knew the answer. 3 hours, 17 minutes, Admiral Rivera confirmed. Catherine straightened her uniform. Execute Operation Firefly. Authorization code Morrison, Alpha 70. Across the solar system, pieces of space debris began to move. To the Hylaxian sensors, it appeared as normal gravitational drift, the kind of chaos they'd expect from a primitive system cluttered with technological waste. Their prediction algorithms calculated safe corridors through the debris field, adjusting their fleet positions with mathematical precision. That was exactly what Catherine had counted on. Platforms charging, Dr. Thompson reported. Energy signatures still below detection threshold. Hylaxian fleet is maintaining position, exactly as predicted. They're actually moving their ships into our optimal target zones. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. They just can't help themselves. Their tactical doctrine demands perfect geometric spacing. Mom. Rivera's voice cut through the tension. They're powering up weapons across their entire fleet. Energy readings suggest they're preparing for full bombardment. Now, Dr. Thompson, light them up. In the space of a heartbeat, thousands of dormant platforms awakened. What had appeared as simple debris transformed, unfurling like metallic flowers to reveal weapon arrays that had been waiting years for this moment. The Hylaxian fleet found itself caught in a three-dimensional crossfire of their own making. Multiple direct hits. Hannah Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. Their shields are adapting, but we're cycling through weapon configurations faster than they can compensate. 23 enemy vessels disabled, 47 showing critical damage. The space around Mars erupted in a deadly light show as Earth's hidden arsenal revealed itself. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and weaponry the Hylaxians had never encountered sliced through their formation. Their perfect military spacing became a perfect target grid. Enemy fleet is attempting to regroup, Rivera reported. They're trying to form a defensive sphere, but the debris field is limiting their movements. Catherine opened a channel to all Earth forces. Push the advantage. Activate secondary platforms and begin Phase 2 of the assault. Don't let them establish a stable formation. The battle space transformed into organized chaos. Every piece of debris the Hylaxians had dismissed became a threat. Even their attempts to destroy the platforms backfired. The resulting fragments contained smaller weapons, turning each destroyed platform into a cluster of new threats. Incoming transmission from Hylaxian Command, Rivera announced. Their Grand Admiral is demanding to know what trickery this is. Send no response, Catherine ordered. Let them think about what else they might have overlooked. Dr. Thompson, status of our platform network. 87% operational. Admiral. Loss rates well below projected estimates. The Halaxians still haven't figured out how to track our inactive platforms, so every new activation comes as a complete surprise. Catherine watched as another wave of platforms came online, their weapons finding gaps in the increasingly desperate Halaxian formation. Earth's greatest liability had become its strongest defense, and the galaxy's most powerful empire was learning a harsh lesson about underestimating their primitive opponents. The holographic display in Dr. Marcus Thompson's command center painted the room in an ominous red glow as dozens of massive Halaxian warships engaged their quantum shields. The previously invisible defense barriers now blazed like artificial auroras, their colors shifting through impossible spectrums as they adapted to Earth's attacks. "They're learning," Hannah Rodriguez announced, her fingers flying across 3 separate control interfaces. "Their quantum shields are phase-shifting faster than our weapons can adjust, effectiveness dropping below 40%. Marcus gritted his teeth as he watched another cluster of their platforms go dark. The Halaxians had shifted tactics, abandoning their rigid formations for a more aggressive stance. Their new strategy was brutally simple: destroy everything in their path, whether it looked like a weapon or not. "Admiral Morrison," he called through the secure channel, "we're losing our advantage. They've stopped trying to distinguish between debris and weapons." "Confirmed," Catherine's voice came back, accompanied by the sound of distant explosions. "The Defiant just lost its port shield array. Their targeting systems have evolved beyond our initial predictions." A massive explosion lit up the tactical display as the Halaxians demonstrated their new approach. They'd fired on a seemingly empty sector of space, the blast wave expanding to destroy everything in its radius: weapons platforms, actual debris, and even their own disabled ships. "They're willing to contaminate entire orbital zones just to eliminate our hidden platforms," Hannah reported, her voice tight with concern. "At this rate, they'll create enough radiation distortion to blind both sides' sensors." Marcus switched his attention to the quantum communication analysis running on his auxiliary screen. The Halaxian fleet's coordination had changed, becoming more erratic but also more effective. Their ships now moved with almost organic unpredictability. Then he saw it. "Hannah, focus on their command carrier's emission patterns. There's something odd about their quantum field fluctuations." The young lieutenant adjusted her scanners, and new data streamed across their screens. The Halaxian ships weren't just communicating. They were sharing a unified quantum field, linking their shields and sensors into a single network. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered, despite the situation. "They're using quantum entanglement to share targeting data and shield configurations in real time. No wonder they're adapting so quickly." A warning klaxon blared as another section of their defense grid went dark. The Halaxians had found a pattern in their platform deployment and were systematically destroying entire sectors of space. "Dr. Thompson," Catherine's voice cut through the chaos, "I need options." Marcus stared at the quantum analysis, an idea forming. "Hannah, what happens to a quantum-entangled network if we introduce synchronized electromagnetic pulses at exactly the right frequencies?" Her eyes widened as she ran the calculations. The interference patterns would cascade through their entire command and control system. "But sir, we'd need perfect timing across thousands of platforms. The slightest desynchronization would tell them exactly what we're trying to do." Marcus finished. "Show me our remaining platform coverage." The display shifted, showing the scattered survivors of Earth's defense grid. They had barely 60% of their weapons remaining, but their distribution was still adequate, if they could coordinate them precisely enough. "Admiral," Marcus called, his voice steadier now. "We can't match their quantum shields head-on, but we might be able to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. Request permission to reconfigure all remaining platforms for electromagnetic pulse generation." A brief pause followed, filled only by the sound of distant battle. "The timing would have to be perfect," Catherine finally responded. "One mistake, and we lose everything. That's why we're not going to coordinate it from here." Marcus turned to Hannah. Lieutenant Rodriguez, upload your combat AI to the platforms. Let each one calculate its own timing based on local conditions. They can't predict what we can't control. Hannah's fingers blurred across her console as she implemented the change. Around the solar system, Earth's remaining platforms began to transform again, this time into a weapon that had never been tested against Halaxian technology. Platforms reconfigured, Hannah announced. A distribution complete. They're calculating optimal pulse frequencies now. Marcus watched the tactical display, where the Halaxian fleet continued their advance behind their seemingly impenetrable quantum shields. Sometimes the best way to fight an empire isn't to match their strength, he murmured. It's to make that strength work against them. The moon hung in space like a silent witness to humanity's desperate battle. Admiral Catherine Morrison watched from the Defiance bridge as the massive form of the Halaxian doomsday weapon moved into position, its crystalline structure pulsing with contained energy that distorted the very fabric of space around it. Analysis of the enemy weapon, she demanded, her voice carrying across the tension-filled bridge. It's like nothing we've ever seen, Rivera responded, his console screaming with warnings. The device is generating a gravitational field that's growing exponentially. They're going to tear the moon apart. The tactical display showed the remaining Earth forces scattered across the lunar orbit. Their electromagnetic pulse attack had damaged the Halaxian fleet's coordination, but the aliens had responded by deploying their planet killer, a weapon designed to end resistance through sheer terror. Catherine's private comm crackled to life. Admiral, Dr. Thompson's voice was urgent but controlled. The moon's mass. We can use it. Explain quickly, Doctor. We're running out of time. The Halaxians are generating a gravitational lens, Marcus continued, his words rushing out. But they don't understand Earth's orbital mechanics like we do. Lieutenant Rodriguez found a way to use our remaining platforms to create a resonance pattern with the moon's natural gravitational field. Catherine's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. You want to turn the moon into a weapon. Better. There was an edge of excitement in Marcus's voice despite the dire situation. We can turn it into the biggest mirror humanity has ever built. The bridge crew watched in horror as the Halaxian weapon began its firing sequence. Streams of quantum-enhanced energy poured from the crystalline structure, warping space itself as they reached for Earth's satellite. All platforms showing ready, Doctor. Hannah's voice joined the channel. But we'll only get one shot at this. The gravitational calculations have to be perfect. Catherine made her decision. Execute the operation. All Earth forces fall back to secondary positions. Clear the lunar orbit. Across the battlefield, Earth's remaining weapons platforms moved with precise coordination. Each one adjusted its position to match the calculations Hannah's combat eye had determined, creating a complex web of gravitational interference patterns around the moon. Halaxian weapon at full power, Rivera shouted as the enemy device unleashed its full fury. The space between the weapon and the moon twisted grotesquely as the gravitational beam struck. But instead of shattering, the moon's surface began to glow with reflected energy. Earth's platforms activated simultaneously, their combined effect turning the moon's natural gravitational field into an amplified lens. Energy reflection at 30% and climbing. Hannah reported, her voice tense with concentration. 40%. 50%. The resonance pattern is holding. The Halaxian weapon's beam caught in the gravitational lens, its power trapped in a feedback loop between the platforms and the moon's mass. The energy built upon itself, growing more intense with each reflection. They're trying to shut it down, Rivera called out, but their containment systems are failing. Catherine watched as the impossible happened. The Halaxians' own weapon turned against them, its power focused and reflected back by the very moon they tried to destroy. The concentrated beam struck their fleet like a solar flare, overwhelming their quantum shields with their own energy. Multiple enemy ships critical. Hannah's voice rose with excitement. Their quantum field network is collapsing under the feedback. The space around the moon blazed brighter than Earth's sun as the trapped energy reached critical mass. When the light faded, the Halaxian doomsday weapon was gone, along with a significant portion of their fleet. The remaining ships struggled with failing systems, their once perfect coordination shattered. "Status report," Catherine demanded, blinking away the afterimages. "Enemy fleet in disarray," Rivera confirmed. "Their quantum network is completely offline. They're falling back to conventional communications." Through the Defiance view screen, Catherine watched the moon continue its eternal orbit, its surface marked with new scars but otherwise intact. They'd turned the enemy's greatest weapon into their greatest defeat, using nothing more than human ingenuity and the natural properties of Earth's oldest companion. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. The moon gambit worked. "Prepare for their counterattack. Something tells me they're about to get creative." Commander Zextal stood before the quantum communications array of the Imperial cruiser Starfire, his scaled hands trembling slightly as he decoded the latest orders from High Command. Around him, the bridge crew worked in fearful silence, their movements betraying the growing unrest that plagued the fleet. "They want us to implement the purification protocol," he announced, his inner eyelids flickering with disgust. "All ships are ordered to release quantum decay warheads. They intend to render the entire solar system uninhabitable." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Relith, straightened in shock. "But that violates the Empire's own integration protocols. We're supposed to preserve valuable worlds for—" "They're no longer interested in integration," Zextal cut him off. "This is about pride now. Humanity has done what no other species has managed. They've made the Empire look weak." The tactical display showed the aftermath of their catastrophic defeat at Earth's moon. Half their fleet was either destroyed or crippled, their supposedly invincible quantum network shattered by the humans' ingenious gravitational trap. Zextal thought of his own homeworld, integrated centuries ago. The Halaxian Empire had stripped away his people's culture, replacing it with rigid doctrine and genetic programming designed to ensure absolute loyalty. But something about this battle had begun to crack that programming. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." "Put it through," Zextal ordered, surprising his crew. On the main screen, Admiral Catherine Morrison's face appeared, her expression stern but not hostile. "Commander Zextal," she addressed him directly, "our analysis suggests your ship's quantum signature is fluctuating outside normal Imperial parameters. Would I be correct in assuming you're having thoughts that your genetic programming shouldn't allow?" The bridge crew froze. Such a direct reference to their biological conditioning was taboo in Imperial society. But Zextal felt a strange sense of relief at having it acknowledged. "Admiral Morrison," he responded carefully, "your species has demonstrated capabilities that our doctrine insisted were impossible. This suggests our doctrine might be flawed in other ways as well." Catherine's lips curved slightly. "We've been monitoring communications between your ships. The quantum degradation from our last attack didn't just disrupt your network, it affected your genetic locks, didn't it?" Zextal's inner eyelids flickered again. The human was right. The gravitational feedback had done more than destroy their weapons. It had created subtle mutations in the quantum-locked genetic codes that maintained Imperial loyalty. "The High Command has ordered the deployment of decay warheads," he said, making his decision. "They would rather destroy this system than admit defeat." "And what do you think about that order, Commander?" Before he could respond, alarms blared across his bridge. The Imperial flagship was powering up its remaining weapons, targeting not Earth, but the ships that showed signs of quantum signature irregularities, ships whose crews were breaking free of their programming. Multiple Imperial vessels opening fire on their own fleet. Ryleth reported, his scales shifting colors with agitation. "They're targeting anyone who shows signs of genetic drift." Zextal's decision crystallized. "Admiral Morrison, I'm transmitting tactical data on Imperial quantum shield frequencies. 78 ships in the fleet are showing signs of genetic liberation. We request temporary sanctuary in exchange for our assistance." Catherine's expression remained carefully neutral. "And what guarantees do we have that this isn't an Imperial trick?" "None," Zextal admitted, "except that your tactics have already proven that everything we were programmed to believe was wrong. You turned our own weapon against us using nothing but debris and natural physics. You've demonstrated that adaptation is stronger than doctrine. We want to help prove that point to the rest of the Empire." Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red as more Imperial loyalists turned their weapons on their own fleet. Zextal watched the tactical display, seeing the battle lines redraw themselves based not on species, but on ideology. Those who clung to rigid Imperial doctrine against those who dared to think differently. "Very well, Commander," Catherine finally responded. "Let's show your former masters what happens when you combine human ingenuity with insider knowledge of Imperial systems." Dr. Marcus Thompson stood in the combined command center, now shared with their Halaxian allies, as the massive holographic display showed thousands of automated cargo ships emerging from their hidden positions throughout the solar system. Beside him, Commander Zextal's scales shifted to a deep blue of astonishment. "All those supply vessels," the Halaxian commander whispered. "We dismissed them as primitive transport ships." "That's exactly what we wanted you to think," Hannah Rodriguez replied, her fingers dancing across the quantum-enhanced control interface they'd adapted from Halaxian technology. "Each one carries millions of microdrones, waiting for this moment." Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the command channel. "Operation Ghost Fleet is go. Authorization code: Morrison Omega Final." The cargo ship's external panels split apart like blooming flowers, releasing clouds of microscopic hunters into space. To the Imperial sensors, they appeared as natural phenomena: cosmic radiation, solar wind particles, and asteroid dust. The rebel Halaxian ships, now integrated into Earth's defense network, provided real-time data on Imperial blind spots. "First wave of drones entering attack positions," Hannah announced, mimicking natural space phenomena patterns. Now, Marcus watched as the tactical display transformed. The drones moved in elegant, seemingly random patterns that exactly matched the background radiation signature of space itself. The Imperial fleet's sensors, programmed to detect artificial patterns, saw nothing but normal cosmic activity. "Your species truly excels at deception," Zextal observed, but his tone carried admiration rather than criticism. "We were always taught that direct force was the only path to victory. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't believe exists," Marcus replied as he initiated the next phase. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, begin targeting sequence." The microdrones activated in synchronized waves, each cluster appearing to be nothing more than a surge in background radiation until the moment they struck. Imperial ships found their quantum shields compromised by attackers too small to track, too numerous to stop, and too random to predict. "Multiple hits confirmed," Hannah called out. "Drone swarms are penetrating their shield gaps exactly as planned. Imperial command ships showing critical system failures." Through the tactical feed, they watched as the mighty Imperial fleet faced an enemy they couldn't fight conventionally. The microdrones, guided by distributed AI networks that learned and adapted in real time, targeted crucial systems with surgical precision. "Admiral," Marcus called through the command channel, "Zextal's data on their quantum shield frequencies is proving invaluable. The drones are achieving an 87% penetration rate." "Excellent," Catherine responded. "Commander Zextal, are your freed ships in position?" The Halaxian commander checked his own display, where the 78 ships that had broken from Imperial control showed in green. "Ready to execute pincer movement on your mark, Admiral. My crews are eager to demonstrate that adaptation trumps blind obedience." The command center erupted in activity as the final phase began. The rebel Halaxian ships, their quantum shields modulated to work in harmony with the drone swarms, engaged their former fleet. Each liberated vessel fought with a creativity and unpredictability that their rigidly programmed opponents couldn't match. Imperial Command Carrier is trying to restore their quantum network, Hannah reported. But the drones are disrupting their synchronization. They can't establish a stable field. Marcus watched as the tactical situation shifted decisively. The Imperial fleet, designed to fight conventional battles against conventional foes, found itself caught between invisible swarms of microdrones and their own rebellious ships. Their formation, once perfect, dissolved into chaos. Multiple Imperial vessels powering down weapons, Hannah announced, her voice rising with excitement. They're requesting permission to surrender. The genetic programming is breaking down across their entire fleet, Zextal added, his scales now shimmering with an iridescent pattern that Marcus had learned meant fierce joy. They're beginning to think for themselves. Admiral Morrison's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Send word to all commands. Accept their surrender, but keep the drone swarms active. Something tells me the Empire isn't quite ready to admit defeat. 2 weeks after the Battle of Earth's moon, Admiral Catherine Morrison stood in the newly constructed meeting chamber aboard the International Space Station. Through the reinforced windows, she watched Halaxian ships and Earth vessels moving in harmony, their crews working together to clear the debris field that had saved humanity. Quite a sight, isn't it? Dr. Marcus Thompson asked as he joined her at the window. Yesterday, I saw a Halaxian engineering team teaching our people how to modify quantum shields for debris collection. 6 weeks ago, they wanted to destroy us. Now they're helping us clean up orbit. The Empire's retreat changed everything, Catherine replied, turning as Commander Zextal entered the chamber, his scales shimmering with the formal patterns of a diplomatic meeting. Behind him, several younger Halaxian officers followed, their own scales displaying patterns that would have been forbidden under Imperial protocol. The latest reports from the outer colonies are encouraging, Zextal announced, his translator conveying both words and tone. 17 more worlds have declared independence from the Empire. Our success here has become a symbol of change throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Hannah Rodriguez, recently promoted to head of Earth Halaxian Technical Integration, brought up a holographic display showing the changing political landscape of known space. The Empire's genetic programming is breaking down faster than anyone predicted. The quantum disruption we caused has spread through their communication networks, affecting every ship that connects to their grid. They're calling it the Liberation Cascade, Zextal added, his inner eyelids flickering with amusement. The Empire built their control on quantum-locked genetic codes, never imagining that the same network that ensured obedience could spread freedom. Catherine studied the tactical display, where the Empire's territory showed signs of fracturing. Not in collapse, but in transformation. And the Imperial response. They're being forced to negotiate, Marcus replied. Our drone swarms prove that bigger ships don't mean better defense. Every Imperial commander now knows their mighty fleets can be brought down by weapons they can't even see. The chamber filled with other officials, Earth military leaders, civilian administrators, and more Halaxian rebels. They gathered around the central table, where a formal document awaited their attention. The Solar System Independence Treaty, Catherine read aloud, guaranteeing Earth's sovereignty and establishing a neutral zone for cultural exchange. More than that, Zextal corrected. This document recognizes humanity's right to develop without interference and establishes Earth as a sanctuary for any species seeking to break free from Imperial control. You've become a beacon of innovation in a galaxy stagnated by doctrine. Hannah activated another display, showing the hybrid technologies already emerging from human-Halaxian cooperation. We're already seeing incredible advances. Their quantum engineering combined with our adaptive programming. Their energy systems merged with our miniaturization techniques. And most importantly, Marcus added, their younger generation is learning to think differently. The Empire's greatest fear wasn't our weapons, it was our ideas. Catherine signed the treaty, her signature joining those of Earth's unified governments and the Liberation Fleet commanders. As she set down the pen, a flash of light through the window caught her attention. A newly commissioned hybrid vessel, its hull displaying both Earth and Liberation fleet markings, activated its quantum drive. The ship's design reflected its heritage, Halaxian power combined with human ingenuity. The Empire's command met Earth's arsenal, Zextal mused, watching the ship disappear into faster-than-light travel, and both sides were transformed by the encounter. Perhaps that's the greatest victory of all. Not the greatest, Catherine corrected, watching more ships launch, carrying combined crews to help other worlds break free from Imperial control. The greatest victory is what comes next. We didn't just defend Earth, we sparked a revolution of ideas. The Empire taught everyone to think in straight lines and rigid formations. We showed the galaxy there's another way. Above them, Earth's orbital defense grid remained vigilant, its platforms once again disguised as debris. But now they were joined by quantum sentinels and hybrid defense systems, combining the best of both civilizations. The solar system had become exactly what the Empire had feared most, a place where adaptation and innovation flourished, freed from the chains of rigid doctrine. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by being the strongest, but by being the most willing to change, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy itself.